The man shot and killed by ICE agents this week. We'll discuss this and more of today's top headlines. I'm Ernie Manouse.
And I'm guest host, Houston Public Media reporter Michael Adkison. That ICE encounter in Houston has many people asking what their rights are if federal agents stop them. Today, we separate the law from the rumors.
And a beloved American story returns for a new generation. But how closely does Netflix's new Little House on the Prairie reflect the real Ingalls family? Well, one of them is here with us to fill us in.
And as always, we want to hear from you. So give us a call or text at 713-440-8870 or email us at talk@hellohouston.org. You can also watch us live on YouTube by going to houstonpublicmedia.org.
Hello Houston is made possible in part by founding sponsors John Bradshaw and Kathy Sanders, by Metro, and by gifts from listeners like you.
Live from NPR News, I'm Lakshmi Singh. Republican South Carolina Governor Henry McMaster is expected to soon announce who he's chosen to serve the rest of Senator Lindsey Graham's term through early January. Graham died unexpectedly Saturday night from what officials say was likely a tear in his aorta. He was 71. President Trump posted on Truth Social this morning that he recommends McMaster pick Graham's sister, Darlene Graham Nordone, to serve as interim senator. Lindsey Graham adopted his younger sister after their parents both died. A special Republican primary will be held in August in South Carolina to select a candidate to then run for the seat permanently in November. As the U.S. and Iran exchange fire for a third straight weekend, President Trump was threatening to block Iran's ships from moving through major oil shipping route, the Strait of Hormuz. NPR's Hadil Al-Shalchi has the latest.
In a post online, President Trump said that the U.S. would be, quote, reinstating a blockade on Iranian ships or customers from entering or leaving the Strait of Hormuz. He said that the U.S. will now be known as, quote, the guardian of the Hormuz Strait. Trump said that other countries will be able to move through the waterway, but that the U.S. would charge a 20% toll on cargo. He said the toll was the price to pay for providing security and safety for this, quote, volatile section of the world. Up until now, the U.S. has been against any tolls or fees being enforced on ships moving through the strait. Iranian leaders said Iran controls the Strait of Hormuz. Hadil Al-Shalchi, NPR News, Istanbul.
New research finds more people in the U.S. are using credit or dipping into their savings to pay for groceries. NPR's Jennifer Ludden has more.
More than a quarter of working-age adults who used a credit card for food did not repay the full amount. That's according to new research by the Urban Institute think tank, which finds an uptick in such financial stress since 2023. Nearly 20% said they'd tapped long-term savings not meant for daily expenses to pay for groceries. A third who used buy now, pay later missed a payment in the last year. The survey was done in December before the Iran war sent gas prices up and further strained many people's budgets. Over the past year, expanded work requirements for federal food aid have also taken hold. Enrollment in that program has dropped by several million people. Jennifer Ludden, NPR News, Washington.
The UK has issued new heat health warnings as record high temperatures continue. More from NPR's Lauren Freyer.
Scientists at two London universities say they've linked more than 2,700 deaths to this heat wave in May and June in England and Wales. They say climate change is making heat waves more intense, frequent, and deadly. Most of those deaths were from heart attacks, strokes, or respiratory failure as the body strains to cool itself. Many British homes aren't built to cope either. Air conditioning is uncommon even in schools, and most are still in session through late July.
It's NPR.
Live from News 88.7 in Houston, I'm Matt Harab. Rain has entered the Houston metro region and scattered thunderstorms are expected to stick around. Governor Abbott has directed the Texas Department of Emergency Management to prepare for a flood threat today. Widespread precipitation is expected throughout the day, which could lead to 2 to 3 inches of accumulation. The Houston region is at a level 2 out of 5 flood risk today. Meanwhile, in about an hour, we're expecting an update on the independent investigation into the death of a Mexican citizen in Houston that occurred last week. Harris County Commissioner Rodney Ellis will be joined by District Attorney Sean Tier regarding the shooting of Lorenzo Salgado Araujo last Tuesday in Magnolia Park. ICE agents have claimed the shooting was done in self-defense. However, that claim has been heavily disputed. Congresswoman Sylvia Garcia visited with the 3 men in ICE custody who were in the van when Salgado Araujo was killed. She told CNN that they continue to dispute the allegations by immigration officials.
Their story is just almost like it was a different incident that happened as opposed to what I said.
Garcia says they told her Saldago Araujo tried to run over anybody. She says he was shot on his right side while ICE officers were pulling the passengers out of the van. An invasive jellyfish is washing up on the Texas coast. Researchers say the Australian white-spotted jellyfish is not normally found in the Gulf. Jace Tunnell is with the Hart Research Institute. He says he's seen a dozen of these jellyfish scattered along the Gulf Coast shoreline over the past 2 weeks. And they're supposed to be found in the western Pacific, but through some water, that might not happen. Researchers say the jellyfish prey on native species and can negatively impact the shrimp industry by clogging nets and damaging fishing equipment. For more news, you can head on over to our website. That, of course, is houstonpublicmedia.org. It's currently 84 degrees here on the UH campus, and we'll hit a high close to 88 later today. I'm Matt Harrop, News 88.7.
Support for NPR comes from NPR stations. Other contributors include Bank of America, sponsor of the FIFA World Cup 2026, dedicated to offering solutions to help businesses win locally and globally. More at bankofamerica.com/gamechangers.
From Houston Public Media and News 88.7, it's Hello Houston, an open forum on today's biggest stories affecting Houston and beyond. Call now, 713-440-8870, or let us know your thoughts on today's topics by emailing us at talk@hellohouston.org. And now, Hello Houston.
Your microphone.
Fine. Ernie Manouse with you on this fine Monday morning. What were you saying, Michael? Michael Adkison is in here with me, by the way.
I was trying to let Ernie know that his microphone wasn't on as he was just talking away. And
I was just sharing with you all the deep, dark secrets of life, and now you'll just have to wonder what the answers are. Today is Monday, which means it's Mondays with Michael. Michael Adkison from the HPM Newsroom is sitting in with me today in the special guest host chair. Hello, sir.
Hello.
Did you have a good weekend?
Hello, Houston.
Hello, Houston. Did you have a good weekend?
I had a good weekend. It was a busy weekend, obviously, covering the shooting and catching our breath and covering all that. I was a little bit away from the news. My colleague Bianca Seward was at the vigil this weekend. I had a wedding to go to that was over the course of a couple days, so I was not covering the news. I was busy with the wedding. But what about you?
I went and I saw again the Tamari Cooper show, and that was fun to see. It took some friends, and we went and saw it again and laughed our way through Friday night, which, as I said to everyone there, it was such a heavy news week and what had happened in our community. We all need a moment to just decompress. But when you do take a moment like that, it isn't to forget the severity and the importance of the situation we are facing. And as we move into a new week, that story should still, and of course we're talking about the ICE shooting that happened in our community, and that unfortunately, other incidents are happening. There was just another shooting in Biddeford, Maine yesterday, once again with ICE. And we can't forget what happened in our own community and the need for answers there.
No.
And I've seen Sylvia Garcia, Representative Garcia, on the news fighting to get more information. She met with two of the other folks that were in the van at the time to get answers. And it's a hard story, but we do need to take those moments where we can decompress for a moment, and then you come back to work stronger and ready to take on these stories.
Yeah, I think just to share a little bit behind the scenes of Houston Public Media and how we operate, we do a daily news meeting every day to talk about what's going on in the world, what everyone's working on, and we also get updates on coverage and specifically our social media, how they're doing. And one of our social media workers was explaining that we had an increase in engagement with accounts of something like 400% in the last week. And I think just sharing that number really, to me, speaks to moments like this really define journalism as public service. We have the time and the ability to ask questions, speak to people, really work hard to get that information for people. And it shows that people are seeking that information, looking to us, looking for anything that we can gather. And it's been a hard story to get information on. So far, no video has turned up of the shooting itself. We have tried looking for it and are still trying to look for it, but nothing has turned up so far. But it really speaks to, like I said, I think the idea that journalists provide a public service and they turn to us. They turn. Hello, Houston. That Sean Tier, the district attorney for Harris County, was here breaking that news on Thursday that we were working hard to get him on the show. And you did a great interview with him and got that information from him, saying that he was doing an independent investigation in his own office. And so, I think that now is sort of journalism's finest hour of really bringing that news content and news coverage and information to the public.
And I think it's part of the it's a credit to the way we cover a news story and with the fairness that we do it, that folks make themselves available to us, that we had Sean Tier first. We had Sylvia Garcia on Wednesday morning, right after the news was breaking of all of this. And so it says a lot. And that's what we hope you'll continue to support when you support this station. But when you mention the number of hits we got on something, I want to make clear, we don't follow. We don't chase that.
No.
We don't choose our stories for, as other news organizations are known to do, what will get the most engagement. It's a separate entity here. And so we have a news department that does that, and we have a social media department that engages at that end of it, and one does not lead the other. So the stories are because they matter to our community.
And I'll say that if you go to our website, houstonpublicmedia.org, not to toot my own horn or anything like that, I spent a lot of time last week working on an article, talking with folks in East End about this and what it does for the community and the history of activism in the East End neighborhood. And all of which to say, please read that article and learn about the history of this community and its activist history. It's fascinating. But also that in talking with so many people in the hours and days after this shooting, which was last Tuesday, I don't think I heard anyone say they heard about the shooting from anywhere other than social media. That's how virtually everyone found out about this. And so that's sort of, to your point of talking about how we engage with the audience, that's why we have a social media team. It's not to chase clicks. We are a nonprofit. We don't have to chase clicks. We do it because that's where people are getting their news coverage. And we have a great team that puts all of our content on there and puts unique coverage and coverage that you're not going to find from other news out. We sound like we're pitching or pledging right now.
I know. Well, in some ways, I think all the work we do always is doing the pitching for us.
Absolutely.
I do want to mention that as we talk about this story, a lot of questions come up in the community about, we saw what happened to Lorenzo, and he was in this van, he was on his way, and he was pursued, as far as we can tell, by unmarked cars. And you find yourselves, people can find themselves in this situation. I know there's a lot of concern out there in the community about, well, how do you react? Did he do? Now, we don't know exactly what happened in the moments. Both Sylvia Garcia and their lawyer have talked with two of the other occupants of the van and have heard the story from them, but have not shared it because they don't want to harm the court case or the investigation in any way. But we don't know what happened in those moments, but what is the proper way what are your rights in that situation? What should you and shouldn't you do? Gordon Quan, who is a regular listener to the program, he's an immigration attorney, he was also city council member and mayor pro tem. He's going to be joining us a little later in the show today to talk about what are your rights in those situations? What can you do to remain safe? What can you do? How do you interact in these situations? Not always what is the legal point of it, but what is the one to make sure you get out of it in the best shape you can so that you can then later on deal with the situation, because you don't want to find yourself laying on the street with these folks on top of you. That's coming up. Also, some lighter stuff in the show today. I don't know if you're a big Netflix watcher. Little House on the Prairie is back again in an all-new series, and it turns out the Ingalls family has a direct connection right into our community here in Houston, and we're going to share that connection a little later in the show. Also, famed author, she wrote the book Moxie, Jennifer Mathieu, sat down with me for a conversation. We're going to play part of that. She's not just a best-selling author, but also a HISD teacher, or was an HISD teacher. Still teaches, and she's going to talk about education and the importance of education. And so there's a whole lot more coming in the show today. But as always, we like to start off with the news of the day, and you can figure where that news is going to be. Michael, lead us in.
More than 200 people gathered on Saturday to honor the life of Lorenzo Salgado Araujo, the man who was shot and killed by ICE agents last week. The group said prayers and mourned his death, as well as the deaths of others like Renee Good and Alex Prairie, who had lost their lives during ICE encounters in Minnesota earlier this year. Salgado Araujo was shot Tuesday morning during what ICE has called a, quote, targeted enforcement operation in Houston's East End neighborhood. He was traveling to work with 3 other men in his car. In a statement to Houston Public Media, a Department of Homeland Security spokesperson did not specify whether any of the people in the vehicle were intended targets, saying one of the individuals in the van, quote, resembled the target. An ICE spokesperson said during the stop, Salgado Araujo was attempting to evade arrest and allegedly rammed his van into an ICE vehicle, causing an ICE agent to fire his weapon. No video of the shooting has been released. The officers were not wearing body cameras or using dash cameras. 2 of the other men in the car with Lorenzo Salgado Araujo have disputed ICE's account of the moments leading up to the shooting. It's a very heavy story that's on the minds of many, if not all, Houstonians this week. What are your thoughts on the latest developments of no cameras and potentially not the target of the actual operation that ICE agents were focused on? If you attended any of the vigils or protests, let us know what you think and how it's handled and what could be next for the Houston area. Give us a call, 713-440-8870, or you can also text that number, 713-440-8870. Ernie, as I said, this is sort of on everyone's minds right now. Even over the weekend, it was, I mentioned that I was at a wedding. It was what most people were talking about or bringing up. And, it's what I've heard in speaking with the East End neighborhood residents that I said that I did for that article. I think everyone said, we've heard about ICE, operating. We've heard about Minnesota. We've heard about these incidents. It's different when it's here. It's different when it's the neighborhood that across the street from the meat market that you go to.
Yeah. I will tell you, just for point of reference, we have been in contact with Sylvia Garcia, Representative Sylvia Garcia's office. She unfortunately is flying right now during our show today, so she wasn't able to join us, but is going to look for a moment later in the week to join us to fill us in on the latest of what she's doing. She's been very personally involved in this story. This happened, of course, in her district, but as I understand, she was at the hospital after the shooting happened and stayed overnight with the family members trying to get answers, which, frighteningly enough, there wasn't much available to them. Right. And it's a very sad story on a lot of different directions and accounts. Yeah. And she did talk a bit about, spoken about the body cams and her outrage at the fact that they have money for those body cameras with ICE, and why they don't have them is inexcusable. I'm a conspiracy theorist that, as I sit here, and I never thought I was until we get into these kind of stories. And I wonder, well, do we know that there was no body cameras? They say there wasn't. Did anything get captured by a dash cam or a body cam that has been turned off or not put forward? And I hope people are looking more closely at the videos that have surfaced to look and see if there's any indicator of that.
Yeah, and certainly we are still, even up to this morning, minutes before I went on the air, are still working in the newsroom to try to get whatever video that we can. There's a library down the street that you can put in a Public Information Act request for. Just different things like that could show us whatever we can find for this shooting. Anecdotally speaking, from a reporter's perspective, that I've seen what happened, in the moments afterward and the attention that it's got. And I've wondered, these are the types of things that reporters ask themselves of, what would it take for here in Houston to have the level of reaction that we saw in Minneapolis earlier this year? And I think one of the biggest factors in that is there was so much attention and so many cameras that captured the killings of Renee Good or Alex Prairie that we don't have here. So we've heard that the other men in the car with Lorenzo Salgado Araujo have disputed that account, but we haven't seen video. So it really is just a story of taking people's word for it, essentially, and trying to figure out independently, what do we think happened? What's the story here? And so, it's different, but that, I think, has been the biggest factor of, asking ourselves how close are we to seeing the level of protest that we saw in Minneapolis? And I think that is one of the biggest factors, is we still don't know exactly what happened.
Right. And the Prairie and Good situations, in both of those shootings, there was a gathering of people before the shootings took place. They were there, they were protesting, so the cameras were pointed. Our case, it was early in the morning. People didn't know this was about to happen. They weren't out on the streets. I'm concerned. I brought this up, I think with Garcia, but definitely with Sean Tier, is the fact that I have seen security camera footage, we all have, of the car coming back toward us, or the van coming back toward us and coming to a stop from a security camera looking down the street. What fascinates me is what happens next. It's a security camera that was on auto record. It didn't know to turn off at a point. So where is the rest of that footage? Why have we not seen what came next? I could understand if somebody was recording it and had opted to turn off or something, but this wasn't being interfered with by people. It was just a running camera. Why is that footage not out there? What happened to that footage? Which makes me believe that footage does exist somewhere or did. And I'm concerned with that. And I hope that that comes out at some point. Another thing, and it's kind of the elephant in the room, but I'm going to bring it up. The difference between the Minnesota shootings and ours here, where Prairie and Good were, by all intents and purposes, white people. And Lorenzo was Hispanic. And I can see from comments that we get online, from interviews and such, that people say, well, he was undocumented. That's not the words they use. And therefore, he was already a criminal. And so the reaction, I don't know, it's a horrible comment on all of us that for some reason Lorenzo is less worthy of our attention because he may have been here he was here undocumented. Because he's Hispanic, it doesn't get the same attention that if it was this of somebody who's white. Sure. I mean, let's just put it out there. That has to be part of the equation of what we're looking at here.
Yeah. I'll note on YouTube, my British computer guy writes, how could he be evading arrest if they were unmarked? Speaking of the cars that were chasing the van, they were unmarked. To him, it would have looked like a carjacking were the agents in uniform. That's something that we've heard. It's tough to keep track of who has said what, but I believe it was Congresswoman Sylvia Garcia basically said, if you were being followed by cars like that are not marked, what would you do? Would you think I need to pull over? This is law enforcement, or what would you think? It's tough to know unless you're in that situation yourself. And so we've heard that concern before as well. And speaking with the residents in that community, I've also heard that same sentiment of like, he probably thought he was getting carjacked. He probably thought that people were chasing him, not necessarily law enforcement.
But I wonder, and folks, you can share with us on this. If you are Hispanic or Hispanic presenting, in today's day and age, if you are being chased by two black SUVs or unmarked cars, what is your first initial response? I would think it's got to be ICE, just because of the attention these stories get. I would not think it's a carjacking, and that's just me. So I'm curious if you're Hispanic, or if someone would assume you're Hispanic by looking at you, is that your first thought? Do you think it's a carjacking, or would you automatically think it's ICE? I don't know. For me, I think if a car was chasing me, I would be like, okay, what's going on? I would not think ICE, but that's well, how about you?
Yeah. It's tough to say. I think that one thing I've thought is, if you see me, you wouldn't know it. My whole mom's side of the family is from Argentina. And so, it's really hit me hearing other people talk about this could have been my grandparents, this could have been my mom, my dad, that sort of thing. That my whole family, they've become U.S. citizens. No undocumented people to speak of in my family. But, my grandparents, certainly, if you were to look at them, you might think they're not Americans, they're Latinos. And it's made me fear sort of what would happen to them. People who are U.S. citizens, would they be profiled, that sort of thing. That in the last year has sort of hit me close to home. And I recognize I have so much privilege when I say that. Like I said, you would not know it to look at me. You would not know it to look at my mom. But my grandparents, my uncles, and great uncles, you might look at them and wonder. And so that's been fearful to me you can be a U.S. citizen and still be profiled, that you can still be swept up in all of this.
Last fall, I've mentioned one of my mom's caregivers was of Mexican descent, and she wouldn't take my mom out to the Walmart anymore. My mom would go out. She'd take her out to Walmart. They'd walk around. Mom could see all the children and say how much she loves them and such. She stopped taking my mom there because she was concerned even though she was doing things, she had proper paperwork in order, that if anything happened, if she were out there, and this is before this incident happened in our town, and what would happen with my mom if they took her, And so she said, no, we just stay home now. And I'm wondering how this kind of story changes your daily behavior and your daily routine.
Yeah.
A lot to think about here. We had other stories, but I think this is an important story for our community, and we'll continue to stay on this story and share information with you as it happens. We're going to take a break right now. When we come back, immigration attorney and former Houston City Council member and Mayor Pro Tem Gordon Quan is going to be joining us to help give us more information about behavior and what we should be doing should we find ourselves in one of these situations. This is Hello Houston on News 88.7.
Meet Tio Choco. We just took his keys for the day and gave him a Ride Metro fare card. This is his story. Visit ridemetro.org/Choco to find out where is Choco.
Is 85% of the way to our resiliency fund goal. Now $650,000 remain. Your gift helps us stay ready for what comes next. Give now at houstonpublicmedia.org/donate.
HPM Plus brings you the latest news and information from around the world and across the street. Trusted journalists delivering facts, fairness, and perspective. Keeping you connected by keeping you informed. PBS NewsHour, Frontline, and documentaries that provide a voice to the voiceless. Stream live, engage on demand, and enjoy past seasons through PBS Passport. Search HPM Plus on your smart and connected TVs and stay informed.
Support for Houston Public Media comes from United Way of Greater Houston, uniting donors, volunteers, and community partners to help our neighbors struggling to make ends meet land on their feet and stay there. Information at unitedwayhouston.org.
Tonight on Houston Public Media TV8, enjoy 2 episodes of Antiques Roadshow from Living History Farms in Iowa starting at 7. Then Iconic America looks at the Statue of Liberty at 9. Tonight on TV8.
Support for Houston Public Media comes from School of the Woods, founded in 1962, offering Montessori education from early childhood through grade 12. Enrollment is open now. More info at schoolofthewoods.org. Support for Houston Public Media comes from listeners like you and from Baylor College of Medicine. With over 125 years of innovation behind it, Baylor has driven progress in health and medicine through research, education, and care that push the frontiers of modern science.
And now back to Hello Houston. To comment on today's topics, call or text 713-440-8870 or email us at talk@hellohouston.org. And now Ernie Manouse and guest host Michael Adkison.
A fatal encounter between ICE agents and a Houston man last week has raised questions about immigration enforcement operations and what rights people have when they're stopped by federal agents. So what should you do if you're approached by ICE, and what are the rights that you do have? Joining us now to answer these and other questions is immigration attorney Gordon Quan. He's also managing partner and co-founder of the Quan Law Group, who you may know as a former Houston City Council member and Mayor Pro Tem for the city of Houston. He's also a listener to Hello Houston. Gordon, welcome to the program.
Thank you, Ernie. Yes, longtime listener, first-time caller last week.
Yes. I guess the question, this whole conversation starts with the concern about whether or not Lorenzo knew he was being followed and that these were federal agents. We don't know what happened in the moments of the encounter itself. But nobody wants to end up the way this situation turned out. But people don't know, what are you supposed to do? What do you have to do? And does any of that matter when you're approached by these unmarked agents?
You know, this is a tough question because there is a protocol in place as to how immigration agents are to act when they encounter a person who they're seeking to detain. These rules have been in place. They follow civil procedure. They follow the Constitution. But, you know, last year in 2025, the Supreme Court came back with a very interesting decision in Nome versus Vasquez-Perdelma. In that case, they said you can stop a person and question them because of their ethnicity, the place they're at, things like that. which really went against years of Supreme Court law that said that just because of mere appearance of ethnicity or questions like that are not sufficient without probable cause of a crime being committed. So now it seems like it's given license to these ICE agents to stop anybody they suspect as being undocumented. And so, you know, it really saddens me that this constitutional right that we have, a freedom from unreasonable search and seizure, which is under the Constitution, has really been allowed to be loosened, and that ICE can now suddenly stop people just because they think that person is undocumented. So, answering your question, if you were encountered by an ICE officer, they have the right to stop you and question you. And so you have your right to say, I don't want to talk to you, I don't want to offer information. But the reality is that most people are intimidated, and if they have nothing to fear, they just go ahead and answer. And once they answer, then they're given them permission to go forward and ask more questions. So,
can you, in the situation, say, I would like to record this interaction and turn on your recording on your phone? Is that legal?
That is legal. And while they do not like it, it certainly is legal, and it's permissible for you to do so.
And I guess part of the problem is if you do say, you know, I'm going to invoke my Fifth Amendment right not to speak, I would like an attorney present for any kind of questioning. In those situations, we don't actually know what the agents are responding to and if they will honor those requests. I've had guests say to us before, at the end of the day, your sole goal in the moment of interaction is to get out of it alive, is to get out of it without being harassed, abused, whatever the terms may be used that people use. How do you make sure you get out of it, but you're still preserving your rights, or doesn't that matter anymore in these situations?
You know, Ernie, I've told people, be polite as can be, answer respectfully, don't take any action that would incite physical violence on the behalf of the person. I'd rather them be detained and let me get them out of custody later on, as opposed to them being charged with some type of resistance to arrest and things of that nature.
Yeah. I just want to remind everyone we are speaking with immigration attorney Gordon Quan. If you want to join the conversation or you have questions, 713-440-8870. A very disturbing part of all of this is with all of the interviews we have isolated from this series this week last week we've been doing, the comments we keep getting are repeated often. If you didn't want to get shot, you shouldn't have been in the country undocumented. If you didn't want to break a crime, he was already a criminal because he was here undocumented. Can you, once again, talk a little bit about where it falls in our justice system to be here undocumented?
As you well know, this is a civil area of the law, not a criminal area of the law. So even though he was undocumented in the United States, that is not a crime under the criminal statutes. It's a civil crime. He is entitled to due process as well. So as you have heard, he was in the process of seeking some type of immigration relief. And under our laws, you are entitled to go before an immigration judge and tell your side of the story.
Gordon.
So back to his case. So yes, he was here in an undocumented state, and he could have been detained for that purpose. He would then need to be charged for that offense and then have his day in court.
Gordon, to go back to Ernie's first question, which was about the, you've seen the video that there is what video that we do have, which shows the van being pursued by two unmarked vehicles. You know, if you were Lorenzo and you live in this community and you see unmarked cars following you, what were his options? Did he have to pull over? Certainly I'm not saying evade arrest or evade law enforcement, but you don't in that scenario, he hypothetically didn't know that there was law enforcement. I should say there may have been sirens going off. The videos have been silent. They don't have audio, but there's no lights. There's no markings. Just what were his options, essentially?
Well, I think, Michael, it'd be the normal pursuit of, if I had two cars chasing after me, I'd be wondering, who are these people? What are they doing? And fear for my life. So I actually probably go to the closest police station I could get to make sure I'm in a safe location. I don't know if he would have thought that. I know where he was in Magnolia Park. I'm very familiar with that neighborhood. There is a substation down Canal Street from where the incident occurred.
If I can also, just your thoughts on Harris County District Attorney Sean Tier has said that his office is talking to folks in Minneapolis about this. As an immigration lawyer, what sort of insight would they be able to provide about how things were handled in Minneapolis that then could be applied to this situation? Does that make sense?
Yes. My thinking as a lawyer would be, did they violate their own protocol and rules so that I could see that they were acting outside of the scope of their duties? Their argument is, hey, we were following the law, we were following our federal regulations. But if you look at what their rules actually are, how they were to encounter people, are they to shoot at vehicles and things of that nature? If they did not act properly, then they can be found guilty of a crime beyond the protection they would normally get because of being police officers or law enforcement officers.
Let me ask, when we talk about the way you should behave in the situation, I think a big fear is, and help me walk through this a little bit, if in this particular case, in any case, if you simply go along with what they're saying, I think there's a fear that people have that they will be detained and then may very quickly fall out of the justice system and due process and could find themselves deported or moved on. Legally, well, I don't even know if legally is the right term anymore. Practically, what happens today if somebody is detained by ICE? Is that, and I think that's why this fear of not knowing leads people to wanting to run, because there's a belief out there, if you get detained, it's over. What do you understand happens?
If you get detained, the regulations provide that within 72 hours, they are to issue a notice to appear explaining why your detention is being held. Right now, there's a number of cases on habeas corpus where they've failed to respond to exactly what the basis is. Is there a ground to hold people? But again, they're supposed to explain to you what the basis is for that detention, and you have a right to challenge it.
Yeah, I mean, if they're not following policy, though, I think that then leads to the fear in the community of, if I'm being pursued, run. What we have seen is when people run, it never seems to turn out well. But we're also seeing when they're detained, it often doesn't turn out well, and that this due process is being ignored. From where you sit, is it, in the vast majority of these cases, being ignored, or is it happening and the media just gloms on to the cases that do ignore it?
Well, the cases I've seen, it is being followed. I mean, they have, as you see, thousands of people in detention right now and millions of cases going through the hearing process. So that is due process to that extent, that they are having their day in court. Now, one of the policies I've seen from this administration, which I've not seen from others, is trying to invoke more fear. These ads that they were running, we'll catch you, we'll deport you, you better leave now. And then highlighting those more spectacular cases is really invoking more fear in people's minds than ever before. Under the Obama administration, we had records number of people that were deported, but you didn't see all this discussion about, how the ICE was violating the rules and injuring people and things of that nature, because it wasn't publicized in that way, and things are being followed the way they're supposed to be done. So I think that the Trump administration is set up in the minds of people that you're a goner. You have no way of getting out of this thing. We're going to get you. And so people are just afraid to even take any action at this point.
We have some calls on the line. I'm going to grab them in just a second, but what I want to ask you one more question about all of this, and that is some people are listening right now that may be undocumented, and they don't know what to do, because we're also hearing stories of once you try and follow the legal system, once you go for your day in court, that they're waiting to catch you there too. So what is your advice to somebody right now who is undocumented, listening to this interview? What should they do?
Well, I think that they obviously, and it sounds trite to say, talk to an attorney who really knows immigration law and look at what options they might have. And the truth is, Ernie, in some cases, you may not have much options. One of the rules that we have is a thing called cancellation or removal. If you've been here over 10 years and you can show hardship or extreme hardship to a U.S. citizen spouse, child, parent, or permanent resident spouse, child, or parent, you have your day in court to tell the judge why you should be allowed to stay. But a lot of people don't know all these rules, and the rules are often very complicated. So first of all, I would have them consult with an attorney and see if they have a case, and if they are detained, what options they have on getting released.
Can you appear in court for me, or do I have to show up in court?
I can appear in court with you.
But not for me. So you still do have to expose yourself and could run the risk of being picked up.
Yes, you would have that exposure. We have not seen that on a wide basis here in Houston of late, but there is a chance that you could be arrested.
We're talking with immigration attorney Gordon Quan, 713-440-8870. If you'd like to join the conversation, Rudy from Pearland is on the line. Oh, dropped. Okay, how about Brett from Conroe? Brett is with us. Brett, what's on your mind?
Hi. I have a friend who was picked up and is still detained by ICE, and I was curious if there was anything I could do to help him with his case. I've provided a letter for his family, like for his talking about his character and just the type of person he is. I don't know if that's as far as I can go or not.
Well, Brett, there's probably not a lot you can do for him at this stage. Again, I would like to see what the charges are against him. If he just entered without inspection, if he overstayed his time, if he had a tourist visa and stayed beyond that date. There's been a series of cases dealing with the right of bond for people. For many years, as long as they were detained, they had the right to bond, and there was two questions to be asked. Are they a threat to society, and are they a threat to run? And the letter you've given is a letter that would show he's not a threat, he's a good person, he has ties to the community, he's likely to stay. But there was a recent decision that if the person entered without inspection, they are not entitled to a bond hearing. So without knowing how he entered the country, Brett, I can't really tell you a lot beyond that.
Gordon, let me also ask you kind of along the same lines. If you have a family member that is currently being detained, what can you do?
Well, again, I would have them talk to an immigration lawyer to find out how we can meet with the person. As a matter of fact, I got a call yesterday. A woman was coming from San Francisco to Houston. She went through Intercontinental Airport. They detained her. She had previously filed for asylum. She's being held at a detention facility in Montgomery County. I'd have to go out and meet with her, talk with her, see what their situation is, and then seek to move for a bond to get her released so we can fight her case.
We keep circling back
until I know all the facts, it's hard to say.
We keep circling back to the idea about legal advice. A lot of folks are not in the situation where they can afford a lawyer. Recommendations on how you begin the search for somebody that could aid you free of charge or help you with your situation.
There is a Houston Volunteer Lawyers Association, and that would be where I would look. There's also a coalition of immigration associations that would try to provide help for you. What has happened, Ernie, is that the state of Texas and the federal government have really limited assistance to undocumented people. Catholic Charities at one time had one of the largest groups of immigration lawyers, over 30 lawyers, and their program got wiped out. The same with the YMCA and other nonprofit organizations. So it's extremely difficult nowadays to find help. I'm working with the University of Houston Law School. The state of Texas has removed any monies that would help represent undocumented people. We're trying to, in fact, do a program to raise monies so that the clinic can continue to help people, but without state funds. So you're right. That's one of the big problems. They've undercut free legal assistance to most people.
Gordon, a question for you that I'm not positive you'll have the answer for, but that is, the reporting has been that ICE operations are increasing. Obviously we've had these shootings just here in Houston and in Maine over the weekend. So, with the evidence where it is, how quickly, from your perspective, will it take for the immigration courts to sort of be flooded by these cases and almost be, I hate to say overwhelmed, but you know what I'm getting at of there are so many cases on their plate that they are having to play catch up essentially in real time. How long would it take for that to happen?
It's happening now, Michael, to tell you the truth. I mean, we have approximately 3.2 million cases in immigration courts right now. They've hired a number of judges. They're continuing to hire judges, and the Board of Immigration Appeals is coming down with more decisions that limit rights that can be asserted. But the situation is really dire, I think. The Biden administration had taken a position that we're going to look at criminals first and foremost. And if the person has a long history here and they have a likelihood of being able to obtain immigration in the future, that's not a case that we want to pursue. We want to utilize our resources more on those who commit crimes. And that's what, again, Trump had campaigned on. But the reality is that everybody's being caught in this net, and it is overwhelming the system as is. So when you say when will it be overwhelmed, it's overwhelmed now.
Gordon, thank you so much for making yourself available to us today. It all came out of you simply calling on Friday, and then we got you in our net and dragged you in. Thank you for taking the questions and for being with us, and I hope you'll continue to help support.
Well, let me just say in passing, I'm trying to get together a manual, and I'll send it to you once we can get it. It's this organization that's put together about what to do in advance of being detained by immigration and what your rights are after that. Once I can get that to you, I'll let you know, Ernie, so hopefully you can let other people know, because there's such a lack of information out there now, and so many resources have been taken away from our community. So the more they know, the better off they are.
Gordon, thank you very much. I'll look for that document. We'll share it out with our listeners too when you put it together, and I hope you'll come back. Thank you.
Have a great day, both you and Michael. Bye.
Gordon Quan is managing partner and co-founder of Quan Law Group right here in the Houston area. Stay with us as Hello Houston continues.
Meet Damola, songwriter, world-class violinist, and award-winning multi-genre artist. We just took his keys for the day and gave him a Ride Metro fare card. Visit ridemetro.org/Damola to learn more about his ride.
Spain needed goals deep in the second half of their last 2 knockout matches to make it here. Both came from veteran Miquel Merino. Spain navigated a bumpy group stage and various injuries, but they are still loaded with talent. Their squad is young, featuring teenagers Pau Cubarsí and Lamine Yamal, who is having a quiet World Cup so far. He has scored once in Spain's 6 matches, and an injury he picked up late last season limited his availability early. Yamal didn't play a full match until the round of 16, but has gone the distance in Spain's last 2 matches, and aside from the light goal tally, his play has been excellent. France went into this World Cup with high expectations. They won it all in 2018, lost in the final in 2022 to Argentina, and have looked like the team to beat throughout this year's tournament. Led by a star-studded front line that reads like a who's who of global soccer, the French team breezed through the group stage. Earlier this year, manager Didier Deschamps announced he would be retiring after this World Cup. He has since become the winningest manager in World Cup history, and his team will look to send him off with a second World Cup triumph in charge of the team. But first, they have to beat Spain tomorrow in Dallas to get there. I'm Juan Diego Garcia.
Support for soccer tournament coverage comes from SPF 1000 Vampire Sunscreen, the podcast that asks, what is the darkness to you? Find it wherever you get your podcasts.
Support for this soccer update comes from Karbach Brewing, makers of Hopadillo IPA, hosting summer soccer at Karbach, featuring live matches on a 14-foot LED screen along with internationally inspired food and drink offerings.
And now back to Hello Houston. To comment on today's topics, call or text 713-440-8870 or email us at talk@hellohouston.org. And now Ernie Manouse and guest host Michael Adkison.
The Little House on the Prairie books were a series of children's novels written by Laura Ingalls Wilder. Of course, I'm sure everybody knows that, based on her childhood growing up in the American Midwest in the later part of the 1800s. The books were later adapted into a widely popular and celebrated TV series of the same name that also centered on the Ingalls family and their lives living on a farm in the American Midwest. And now the stories of the Ingalls family have returned to the small screen with the release of a new Little House on the Prairie series, which premiered on Netflix last week. To tell us more about the Ingalls family and this new series, we're joined by author R. Lee Ingalls, our own resident Houstonian member of the Ingalls family. Welcome back to the show.
Thank you. Thank you. It's my pleasure to be here.
All right, I got to start with this
Please.
question. When did you first become aware of the fact that you were related to this family?
Yeah, so I was pretty young, probably in second grade, living in Wisconsin. At school, one of my schoolmates came up to me during recess and asked, "Are you part of the Little House on the Prairie Ingalls family? You spell your last name the same way." And I thought, well, I don't know. So I went home and asked my mother, and she said, yes, in fact, you are. She didn't know how we were, but she knew we were. So that's when I found out.
And then for folks that don't know, the connection is?
Yeah, so the connection is, if you know her family, Laura's family, she's one of 4 girls. The only one that had a child was Laura. And her only child, Rose, did have a baby that didn't make it through infancy. So there are no direct descendants of any of the 4 girls, which means there are no direct descendants of Charles and Carolyn either.
Pa.
Yeah, Mom, Pa. My great-great-grandfather was Charles' brother, Lansford James Ingalls.
Okay.
Yeah.
So that just to
That's
put
a
it
connection.
in place there.
Yes.
So once you become aware of who your family is,
yes.
Did you start reading the books early on? Did you I want to know this?
It was
or was it
Yeah, no, it was kind of required reading when I was growing up. So during school, I thought everybody had to read them in school. So yeah, of course, I did.
Yeah.
Did you have a favorite one of the books? Do you remember?
No, I read them so young. I just have kind of spotty memories of actually reading them. But I would have to say it is Little House on the Prairie. I think that was her most popular book.
It's classic.
Yeah.
Do you remember reading the books and it registering to you of these are my family stories, essentially?
They didn't when I was young, but when the TV series came out, yes. I mean, I keep using the word surreal, and that doesn't really hit the nail on the head because it's very odd to sit there and watch TV and know the story they're telling on television is actually your family's history.
Wow.
And then to recognize that my great-great-grandfather would have had a very similar life experience to Charles, and my great-grandfather was Laura's cousin. So his experience would have been very close to what hers was.
It's funny to me because you sit there and you think about we all have family histories and we all tell stories in our family. Very few of us can turn on the TV and see them playing out.
Yeah. And like I said, it is surreal. That's the best word I can come up with so far.
So, as I understand it, in the original television series, the first couple seasons stay closer to the books, and then it went on 9 years or whatever. It goes off and more stuff comes. Looking at the new Netflix series, they've added some new characters, created a few new things. Do you find the spirit of the stories is still accurate?
Yeah, what I've seen so far, and I have not watched all 8 episodes, it does stay more true to the Little House on the Prairie book itself, or at least the episodes that I have seen. And you're right. They do fill in details that were not part of the book. Some of them are more adult, like the getting land grants and that kind of stuff wasn't part of the book, but they do talk about what that process looked like. So I found it from a historical perspective very interesting and different than what you saw in the book. But the true feeling and sense of what Laura was trying to convey in her books is there. And one of the oddest things in the world is, so you're watching somebody play Charles, who he looks remarkably a lot like my dad, and the skills that he's demonstrating in those that he's known for are the same skills that my dad's was. He was very friendly, everybody loved him, and you ask him to build a house, and he was going to build you a house, and he did that a couple of times during our lives. So it's not far from true.
I want to remind everyone we're talking with R. Lee Ingalls, or as I just know him, Lee Ingalls, member of the Ingalls family that were the subject of Little House on the Prairie, both the books and the TV series. If you'd like to join the conversation, give us a call or text 713-440-8870. That's 713-440-8870. What some people may not know, we keep referring to you as an author. You have followed family stories and written your own prairie books.
Yeah, so it comes naturally. It's in our family. Even our ancestor going back to the 1700s, he was a poet and a published poet. And then Laura was, of course, a writer. And I think when I found out that I was part of that family, it planted a seed that someday someone would pick up the pen again and write about our family. And when no one did, I took that on myself. And yes, I did. I added a 4th and 5th generation of stories of our family to the books that are out there.
Wow.
Yeah.
The shot in the dark, I can't imagine there's an Ingalls family group chat that you guys have going.
Wait.
Oh, I love it. Okay, I was saying it's almost, before we turned the show on, I was like, it's almost like our own American royal family, if you will, the Ingalls family. Do you keep up with them, and what are their thoughts on the new show?
Yeah, so I talk to my family members at least 2-3 times a week.
Wow.
1 or 2 of them. Yeah, and we have, every month we have a family Zoom call that we get on. We do a couple family trips every year. So yeah, we're a very close family.
Oh, I love that.
Yeah.
Do they have thoughts about the new show?
I have not talked to any of them about it yet. No. So I'm sure they do, but...
Is there an Ingalls consultant when they do a new show like this? Did anyone check with family members about told accuracies, any of that, or has it been so marketed as a product already they're kind of out there?
Yeah, well, that's the key. Yes, it has been. There has been so much written about Laura and her family and other parts of our family that there are people that are more expert about our family than I am.
Than even family members.
True. So there's a couple of them, when they say something, I don't dispute what they're saying. They're probably more accurate than I am.
I saw a very funny story the other day in the news, is that someone was making a big deal about the cornbread that Ma makes, and that in the books that Laura talks about it so well. She describes it so articulately that you can almost smell it. Yeah. But you've also done a cookbook on Ingalls family recipes.
Yes. Yeah. So we did early in the 2000s. My family got together and we submitted recipes, but it was a huge book. So nothing was ever done with it until a few years ago. I kind of pared it down to what I use all the time and then included those recipes.
So do you have the cornbread recipe?
I don't have the cornbread recipe, but we did have it all the time. And they talk about using the molasses as a...
Yes.
Yes, we did that too. I thought, wow, I forgot all about that, but we did do that as kids.
Well, it's fun to have you here. It's fun to have this connection to that piece of history and to know it's right here in our own community.
Yeah, thank you.
And thank you for sharing your stories and your part of the family. And of course, as we mentioned, Little House on the Prairie is new again.
Yes.
Out there.
Yes.
Folks are saying,
reimagined.
Watch the Netflix, but then go back. You can see the old series streaming too.
Yeah.
Or read the book.
Oh, read?
Read.
All right. R. Lee Ingalls is the author and member of the Ingalls family that was the subject of Little House on the Prairie, both books and the TV series. Coming up, we're going to continue discussing today's top headlines. We're also going to hear the latest installment of my InnerVIEWS series with another Houston-based author, this one the author of Moxie, Jennifer Mathieu. Stay with us for the second hour of Hello Houston.
Stay tuned. There's more Hello Houston on the way. For the latest in local news, subscribe to the Hello Houston daily newsletter at houstonpublicmedia.org. Hello Houston is a production of Houston Public Media. The opinions expressed by the guests of this program are solely their own and do not represent the views of management, staff, or underwriters of Houston Public Media. This is News 88.7.
Trusted local resources don't happen by accident. It happens because listeners like you step up. Help Houston Public Media not only meet but exceed our Resiliency Fund goal. Give now at houstonpublicmedia.org/donate.
Well, we have a 90% chance of showers and thunder showers today, the high near 88. And tonight, a 50% chance of more rain, a low 75. Currently, thunderstorms in the area and 83. Your NPR station, KUHF, Houston. News 88.7, a service of the University of Houston.
Just ahead on this hour of Hello Houston, U.S. Representative Sylvia Garcia met Saturday with two of the other people that were in the ICE shooting victims' van, and she said their accounts sharply contradict those of ICE. We'll discuss this and more as we continue diving into today's top headlines. I'm Ernie Manouse.
And I'm guest host Houston Public Media reporter Michael Adkison. She's the best-selling Houston author behind Moxie and a longtime HISD English teacher. Jennifer Mathieu joins us.
Plus, for more than 3 decades, Rich Levy helped transform Houston into one of America's great literary cities. Today, a look back at the legacy he leaves behind and what he has planned next.
And we want to hear from you, so give us a call or text at 713-440-8870 or email us at talk@hellohouston.org.
Hello Houston is made possible in part by founding sponsors John Bradshaw and Kathy Sanders, by Metro, and by gifts from listeners like you.
Live from NPR News, I'm Lakshmi Singh. A dozen Democratic state attorneys general are suing to block Paramount from acquiring Warner Brothers Discovery over anti-competitive concerns. A merger would effectively give the Trump-allied Ellison family control over some of the country's largest movie studios, television newsrooms, and other entertainment properties. South Carolina will prepare to hold a special primary election for a new Republican Senate nominee following Senator Lindsey Graham's death over the weekend. Under state law, candidates have a 1-week filing period that begins a week from tomorrow. A preliminary medical examiner report said Graham suffered a tear in his aorta. Graham had just returned from another trip to Ukraine. Democratic Senator Richard Blumenthal says he and Graham were pushing for stronger sanctions against Russia over President Vladimir Putin's ongoing war against Ukraine.
These sanctions would be pivotal in getting Putin to the peace table. That was his objective, and my hope is that his death, tragic as it is, will provide an impetus to President Trump and my Republican colleagues to pass the Russia sanctions bill.
Republican Senator Mitch McConnell has broken weeks of silence about why he was in the hospital. Yesterday, the lawmaker from Kentucky disclosed he had fallen but did not break any bones. He was also being treated for mild pneumonia. The Maine Democratic Party has 2 weeks to select a new candidate to replace Senate nominee Graham Plattner. NPR's Tamara Keith reports the process is now set, but voters are still reeling.
Independent voter Joseph Barabee had been disengaged from politics for decades, but Plattner drew him back in. Now Plattner is out after an allegation of rape he denies, and Barabee is mad.
I am more upset than I've ever been around a political figure in my whole life. I mean, it's devastating.
And he blames the Democratic establishment. State Senate President Maddie Daughtry says she wants to believe Plattner's success was about his message and not the man.
You can have grief for the moment and also anger, but also opportunity and hope that we can turn this around.
Plattner's replacement will be selected at a convention on July 25th. Tamara Keith, NPR News, Brunswick, Maine.
A court finds President Trump's lawsuit against the Internal Revenue Service sought to use the system to help legitimize a nearly $1.8 billion taxpayer-backed compensation fund for Trump's allies. Today, U.S. District Judge Kathleen Williams recommended attorney sanctions and disciplinary action. In South Korea, former President Yoon Suk-yeol has been sentenced to 2 years in prison over election-related corruption. It is the latest in a string of criminal cases against the ousted leader who authorities say masterminded an illegal insurrection in 2024. This is NPR News.
Live from News 88.7 in Houston, I'm Gail DeLauder. Rainstorms with brief periods of intense rainfall are moving across the region. National Weather Service meteorologist Jimmy Fowler looks at what to expect.
We have some deep tropical moisture that's been kind of over us the past couple days, and it's going to stick around over our region through at least midweek. And that's going to kind of help kind of feed these pop-up showers and thunderstorms we were seeing even this morning.
Fowler says drivers need to be careful if storms move through areas already soaked with rain. He says it's possible for water to rise, causing minor street flooding. Following the death of Lorenzo Salgado Araujo, community advocates are talking to East End residents and business owners on what to do if approached by ICE. Jasmine Kadim Gonzalez with the Democratic Socialist of America says anyone in need of assistance should call the Houston Rapid Response Network.
People were there, people were eyewitnesses, and so what we need is for more people to learn how to do that and to feel empowered to do that, to train people to do that. So that way we can have this evidence when this happens again.
Gonzalez says anyone needing more information can reach out to the Immigrant Legal Resource Center. The FAA has given Bush and Hobby airports more than $126 million for infrastructure improvements. Airport System Director Jim Sesniak says the two airports create about $40 billion a year in economic impact.
So it's very important that, we continue to grow them because they are tremendous economic engines for the region.
Work on a Hobby Airport runway is expected to start early next year. An invasive jellyfish is washing up on the Texas coast. Researchers say the Australian white-spotted jellyfish isn't normally found in the Gulf. They're concerned about the jellyfish preying on native species. 80% chance of rain this afternoon, high near 88 degrees. I'm Gail DeLauder, News 88.7.
Support for NPR comes from NPR stations. Other contributors include Capital One, offering their premium travel card, Venture X. What's in your wallet? Terms apply. Details at CapitalOne.com. And listeners like you who donate to this NPR station.
Live from Houston Public Media and News 88.7, it's Hello Houston, an open forum on today's biggest stories affecting Houston and beyond. Call now, 713-440-8870, or let us know your thoughts on today's topics by emailing us at talk@hellohouston.org. And now, Hello Houston with Ernie Manouse.
Hello there with me, because it's Monday. It's Mondays with Michael. Michael Adkison from the newsroom is here with us sitting in. Hello there, Michael.
We'll never get old hearing that. Mondays with Michael.
I know. I love Mondays with Michael. When we finally fill that guest chair for solid, if it's not Michael, will there still be a Monday with Michael?
Maybe Mondays with Michael.
Maybe
That's what
Mondays.
Yeah.
Well, this is a definite Mondays with Michael. It's been a heavy news. We were talking about heavy news week last week, a kind of heavy first hour of our show. But we did end it with some talk on Little House on the Prairie because Lee Ingalls, a member of the Ingalls family, lives right here in Houston. He's an author in his own right. And because of the heavy news week last week, some of our regular features got a bit truncated. And my British computer guy, who watches us always on YouTube and is part of our YouTubers in the chat group there, wrote, if Mrs. British Computer Guy had a current obsession this week, it would be the new Little House on the Prairie.
I like the idea of my and Mrs. British Computer Guy.
Yes, there's my British Computer Guy and Mrs.
Their legal
I thought it
names.
used to be Mrs. My British Computer Guy, but I guess it's just Mrs. British Computer Guy.
That's exactly what it is.
I need clarity there, Computer Guy.
No,
is
and
it
I
just Mrs. or my Mrs.?
I love the idea of the Ingalls family getting together and talking every month. I was fantasizing about the idea of, like you hear about the Kennedys and how they talk to each other and what have you, and how they vet the new people who may be joining the family, those rumors. And I love the idea of an Ingalls Ingalls family that goes through similar stuff.
Well, you had made the comment about if there's a group, and I made a little comment to you, because what Lee didn't mention was he just got to host. I guess different people get to moderate the big Ingalls family conversation. They do like a really big one. I don't know if it's once or twice a year or something.
Yeah.
And he just did it in the spring. And so it was a
Wow.
big deal, but he didn't mention that. So
That's
maybe I have
so
my
funny.
information wrong.
We're just on the news reporting.
We are just there chatting about it all, I tell you. But a lot going on in our community, a lot of stories. And, coming up this hour, I'm really excited. Dear friend of mine, Jennifer Mathieu, is an author, and she's also an educator in our community. She wrote the book that Moxie, the movie Moxie, was based on. It was called Moxie also. Amy Poehler directed that and had a part in
I'm
it.
struggling with her name today.
I always want to say Amy Sedaris, and I know it's not. And I
because
go,
you're
Amy,
friends with Amy Sedaris. We all know.
name dropper. Thank you. But anyway, so Jennifer Mathieu, she sat down with me for an episode of InnerVIEWS, which is my long format interview series that we put up on YouTube. And we usually grab a piece of it for our show right here. So we're going to air some of that coming up in the next hour. Also, Inprint. They're going to have new leadership.
We have a literature forward show today.
We do.
Very book
because you're
forward.
here.
I love it. I love talking about books.
Well, the head of Inprint is going to be retiring from Inprint, and so we're going to have him here to talk about a little bit about his legacy there and what he's going to do next, and that's coming up later in the hour.
Yeah, exciting. I love their organization. And go figure. Me who loves to hear from
books.
authors and
Yeah.
books.
But anyway, as that all continues on, there is also a lot in the news today, and Michael, take us away.
Yeah, I'll mention that we've been covering the ICE shooting that happened last week, and we're going to continue covering that this morning. Harris County Commissioner Rodney Ellis, as well as Sean Tier, the Harris County District Attorney, are having a press conference to talk about pressure for a public investigation into this case, as well as an independent one. So we're going to be continuing to monitor that, and we'll have any updates as they come if there is new information in that case. But otherwise, we're going to turn to something that happened over the weekend. Senator Mitch McConnell on Sunday revealed for the first time that a fall led to his hospitalization, breaking the silence about his condition after weeks of mounting speculation about the Kentucky Republican's health. McConnell, 84, said in a statement that he was, quote, briefly unconscious around the time he was taken to the hospital and has undergone a battery of tests to try and determine what led to his fall. He said he was also treated for mild pneumonia and has been moved to a rehabilitation facility. Quote, in a statement, my doctors have confirmed that I didn't break any bones or suffer a concussion. I did not have a heart attack or a stroke. I don't have any tumors or hemorrhages, McConnell said, adding that he is now, quote, regaining my strength. What are your thoughts? This was something that a lot of folks had their eyes on and a lot of attention was on as McConnell made his first statement in weeks. Over the weekend, give us a call, 713-440-8870. Should we have more transparency about elected officials and their health and how they're doing, or should we have less information? What are your thoughts? I'm trying to think of what the counter of that would be. Give us a call, 713-440-8870. That was a big sigh, Ernie.
Well, I hate myself. And the reason why is because I was never a conspiracy theorist, never in my life. And in the last year or so, just things keep bugging me that I should, I don't know, maybe the world has shifted under my feet.
You know what the word for this is?
What?
Radicalization.
I've been radicalized. I'm sorry. I saw that picture and I don't buy. I mean, I agree it is a photograph and I agree that he is in the picture. It just seems way too forced, way too planned. I mean, we heard 3 different people last week all say they spoke to Mitch McConnell, and they all made reference to the fact it was about a 17-minute call and that he engaged with them about current affairs and all of that. In all of those calls that he made, why weren't any of them to a reputable news source or to a news source at all? Why didn't he reach out? Why is there no video? There is a still photo of an obviously it almost looks like a hostage video showing the newspaper, so you can say, see, it was taken today. The conspiracy theorists out there, not me here, will make reference to the fact where his thumb is holding the newspaper. There's a little white ripple around it, which makes no sense in the photo, so they assume it was photoshopped in. I don't know, but I just don't buy it. In today's day and age, there's such easy ways to say, hello, I'm alive, I'm trying to get better.
For me, my thought is I'm not a conspiracy theorist. I think as a journalist, you have to have a healthy level of skepticism, and I do. I also am someone who very much adheres to Occam's razor, which is, the easiest explanation is probably the truth. Certainly not in every explanation, but.
So what's the easiest explanation here?
Do I think that there's this deep conspiracy about Mitch McConnell and that he's dead and we're covering it up? I'd like to think we're not Soviet Russia covering up Stalin's death, but
okay, but then tell me this. He's an elder statesman, emphasis on elder. He goes missing for a month. Very little information given out about it. The governor of his state is asking for proof of life, which implies he is not having conversations with his state senator. I mean, and then after all of this, finally what we get is this statement, which does not read like something someone wrote or dictated. It looks like it's something that was well crafted to hit every point that needed to obviously be there, that they needed to say, see, he's alive. And then this picture where he looks better than he has looked for years, healthier and more vibrant. I'm sorry, there's something here. It doesn't, for me personally, it doesn't pass the smell test. Sure. Am I saying he's dead? Am I saying he's in a coma? No. But something doesn't feel right. And as either a journalist or a reporter or even a commentator, you got to trust your instincts in a lot of stories. And those instincts make you dig deeper and look for more. Something doesn't feel right. What do you think? 713-440-8870. Am I just out here on a limb and you guys aren't on my camp? Or do you think
another wavelength?
Yeah. Am I just missing it?
No, I think that to your point, do I think that something happened? Yes, because why did it take them so long?
If all he did was have a non-fatal fall,
sure.
a minor fall, as he puts it.
It's almost like the same thing as Occam's razor, but the flip side of the coin is like, why did they take so long to make a statement? What would be the reason? It's because you have some information you don't want getting out there, essentially. That would be why you take so long to put out a statement. I'm sitting here thinking about, I'm trying to remember exactly who it was. I want to say it was Laura Loomer in 2024. There was a period of a few days where then President Joe Biden wasn't seen, and she similarly pushed for proof of life from the president. Said we need to see him. We need to make sure that he's still alive. And obviously Laura Loomer is a conservative activist on social media, and I think that it obviously speaks to this conversation that we have about the age of politicians and who they are, that we even have to have these concerns. But it's I don't know if it makes it different when it's one side of the aisle versus another. But we saw the same thing with Joe Biden, and I think the concern and criticism from Republicans was that Democrats were not asking those questions, and that's kind of what led to the famous 2024 election and the debate and what happened there. So, as far as health and age, I think that transparency is obviously what a lot of people like. Nobody wants a Woodrow Wilson situation again, where the president has had a severe, health crisis, and nobody knows about it, and suddenly other people who are not the elected president are essentially running the country. But very complicated subject. 713-440-8870. Give us a call.
You bring up Laura Loomer, who recently has said, she's already been saying that she thinks that there's a big cover up here in this case. Obviously, she was wrong with President Biden, but she said she would not be shocked if Senator Mitch McConnell's office soon announced that the 84-year-old lawmaker had peacefully passed away in his sleep. She's already on that.
She's on this.
Yeah, she's on this already. Regardless of what you think of her, I'm just sharing with you what she has said. 713-440-8870. Andreas from Katy is on the line. What are you thinking today?
And I think that the transparency is a big issue, but more important is we should not be reigned by so elderly people in general. We should be a young country. We should be healthy, and all these old people don't give that value to a healthy young country.
Yeah.
That's my.
Andreas, thank you for that. It's interesting. I heard someone talking about that on one of the news channels over the weekend, and they were illustrating how the system is set up to reward longevity in these offices.
Sure.
That you gain more power the longer you're there. They encourage lengthy stays, unlike other organizations that would say, come in, be here for like even be it the presidency or other things with term limits, say come in, serve your time, and move on. Where in the Senate and the House, it's like the longer you're there, the more power you get, the more responsibility you get. So it behooves and benefits communities to have their representatives stay longer because they have more say in what happens. But then it leads to this flip side. Oftentimes, too, you have to have accomplished something in life to have the funding and the support to be able to run for these offices in the first time. So rarely is it the young new startup gets the opportunity to get into these positions. And then by the time you have power and authority, you're in your 70s and 80s.
Sure. Just not that I'm pro-elect more old people per se, but that's how an office works. That people who've been there longer end up being more senior, end up having more responsibility, end up being more trusted. It's not so different from other organizations. I would make the argument that it's almost the White House that is the one that's different, because you don't work in an office and then 4 years later you have to leave, unless it's a contracted position, I suppose. But
right.
I'm getting into the
But I believe
semantics.
That's what Washington had thought. It's like you serve your time, going way back. You serve your time, you do what you can, and then you move out of the way for the next one.
Yeah.
Because you're not a king, you're not a monarch, and it's just, I don't know. But then you get the flip side of it, and Lindsey Graham. I was up for some reason late on Saturday night because I'm always up late, and I was there when the news broke. And of course, my first thought was, oh, who's making this up? And I had to go and look. And so I went to reputable news sources, and there it is. He had died. And I thought, wow, how different it is. The moment they know he's dead, they put it out there. Mm-hmm. So then maybe Mitch McConnell hadn't died. It does make me wonder about the investigative reporting on this, how hard it is to get information about Mitch McConnell's health. And so even if it isn't nefarious, they are being extremely guarded about what they're letting out, and that these reporters who are on every single story have not yet infiltrated enough to give us what actually happened with Mitch. What was the hour-by-hour breakdown of what happened there? Surprises me that hasn't leaked.
Yeah, and to that point, and I know you said you don't think Mitch McConnell is dead and they're just covering it up or what have you, like Stalin. But, it is one of those questions of what do you gain by not telling the truth?
Well, I can tell you what they gain.
What do you gain?
Because they keep out of having a potential him losing his seat or something coming. There's an election going on.
I'm saying if he had died, if he is not alive, which is obviously what a lot of conspiracy theorists are saying, that Mitch McConnell has died. It's what if he is dead? Why wouldn't they just say, what's the gain there?
The seat's empty. It's down one member in for the Republican
I suppose that's
side.
fair. That's a fair point. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it's keeping the balance of the Senate.
That's a fair point. I hadn't thought about that.
But he's not voting on anything either.
Yeah, exactly.
So I don't know what the benefit is there. I haven't quite figured out that conspiracy theory yet, but I'm sure it's out there.
Ernie is still connecting the dots here.
I try to find the logic in every story we cover, regardless of politics, regardless of what party you affiliate with, just to follow the fact through the center. But I tell you, folks, you're making it really hard on me with the world we're living in today not to fall into these conspiracies. Another thing, they released over the weekend more UFO footage.
Oh, did they?
Yes,
I didn't even notice that.
And it's like, okay, when with all the release of it, they say, but we don't have any proof of alien life. Mm-hmm. But here's more to look at. It's like, come on, stop it. You're making my poor brain explode. 713-440-8870. Lisa from Galveston wants to join this conversation. Lisa, what's on your mind today?
Yes, I just wanted to comment on Mitch McConnell. I'm just a little concerned about our elected officials and their age.
Mm-hmm.
When we go to the driver's license, my dad had to have his eyes tested. They call him at a certain age just to make sure you're able to drive. And I think for officials, they need a battery of tests like neuropsych testing at starting at least at age 65 to get a baseline, because new onset of dementia is earlier now.
Mm-hmm.
We need to be testing them for their physical. They need to have hearing tests, vision tests, and just to make sure they're appropriate, because they're for we the people. We need to make sure they're okay, and this is something they need to sign up for when they take the job, and it needs to be public because they're representing us.
Yep. Lisa, thank you very much for those thoughts. When she talks about that, of course, I can't help but think then over to Trump and the concerns about his health and all the speculations. Every time we don't hear from him for a couple of days, oh my God, he's dead, he's in the hospital, he's all this. Then all of a sudden he pops back up again exactly as he was beforehand. But it made me think, too, when we elect officials at that level, are we electing those officials for what they're going to do or what they symbolize and what their movement is about? So if Donald Trump isn't in the office every day signing things, is it still moving in the direction of what you're voting for as opposed to who you're voting for?
Yeah.
Food for thought there. Okay, we're going to take a break. When we come back, we've got more stuff to come. Famed local author Jennifer Mathieu is going to sit down with me for my latest episode of InnerVIEWS right here on Hello Houston on News 88.7.
We know you value Houston Public Media. That's why you're watching right now. So take the next step and become a new member of the station you rely on. Every gift makes a difference. And what matters most right now is supporting the station that brings you the news and information you rely on. It only takes a minute to make a big difference. So join as a new member today at houstonpublicmedia.org/donate or call 800-364-8300.
To the final stretch, and your support matters more than ever. 1 year after federal funding was rescinded, listeners across Houston have brought us 85% of the way to our resiliency fund goal. Now $650,000 remains. Your gift today helps close a gap and keeps trusted news, local voices, and public media here for you. Give now at houstonpublicmedia.org/donate or call 888-909-0887.
On the podcast After the Flood from the Texas Newsroom and PBS's Frontline, we meet people who survived last year's floods in the Hill Country and those who lost loved ones. And we try to answer the questions they still have. After the Flood, out now.
Support for Houston Public Media comes from United Way of Greater Houston, uniting donors, volunteers, and community partners to help our neighbors struggling to make ends meet land on their feet and stay there. Information at unitedwayhouston.org.
Support also comes from Rice University's Moody Center for the Arts, presenting Summer Jam, an afternoon of art activities featuring an indoor farmers market, live DJ, outdoor games, and more. Saturday, July 18th at 5 p.m., moody.rice.edu.
Support comes from Southwest Woman Care OBGYN, providing care for women of all ages, including well woman exams, pregnancy care, menopause care, and fibroid treatment in a multilingual setting. More at swwobgyn.com.
And now back to Hello Houston. To comment on today's topics, call or text 713-440-8870 or email us at talk@hellohouston.org. And now Ernie Manouse and guest host Michael Adkison.
Jennifer Mathieu is one of Houston's most acclaimed contemporary authors, best known for her young adult novels, including Moxie, which was adapted into a Netflix film directed by Amy Poehler. But alongside her literary success, Mathieu has spent roughly 2 decades teaching high school English in the Houston public schools. She remains deeply connected to the classroom and has become an outspoken advocate for public education, particularly during the ongoing state takeover of HISD. Her unique perspectives are both as an educator and an author that allow her to examine larger questions about education, student voices, and the future of public schools. Jennifer sat down with me for the latest episode of my series, InnerVIEWS. Here's a part of that conversation. I think the weird part that people may not know if they know you as an author,
yes,
don't know, they may know you teach, might not know you are still a teacher. You didn't have your success in writing and say, this is my career now. I still teach.
Yeah, a lot of people don't know. And it really, my first book came out over 10 years ago. The Truth About Alice came out in 2014. And I remember showing up to work like a few days after the deal had been announced that I had sold the book. And a colleague said, "What are you doing here?" You know, as if the moment my first book sold, I was going to leave the classroom. And, you know, here I am like 12 years later. Not only am I still writing, I'm still teaching.
Yeah.
And I always explain to people, first of all, in the book world, it's never as much money as people think.
Absolutely.
Never is, right?
Yes.
There are very few writers who actually, you know, unless you're like Stephen King, right? You know, there's never as much money as people think. But beyond that, I actually really love having, I guess you could call it a day job, right? I am not the kind of writer who would be in a mentally healthy place if I were alone in my house.
Just writing.
Yeah. I really appreciate going to work. I actually don't even think I would be a good work from home person. That's not me. I know a lot of people love that, right? Especially post-pandemic. But I need to go to work. And being in the classroom, having colleagues, having students, having that routine, I actually think has made me a better writer because I am out in the world observing, the human animal. Yeah. And I just cannot conceive of only being a writer full time. I never have been able to do that.
But do you ever walk in the classroom and get the sense that the students know who you are? Have they read your book and oh my God? And I guess the word has to spread that you're the teacher that wrote Moxie.
Yes. And, my students typically do know, and I've worked at a couple of different schools now as a writer and teacher. And they have heard through the grapevine, particularly with Moxie, because it was a movie. Right. They've come knowing, who I am. I do teach under a different name, but that doesn't really help me stay hidden.
Please, us students, we can figure those things
figure
out.
It out. And, I do tell them on the first day of school when I share a little bit about myself, my hobbies, my interests, my family, I always do mention, that I have an interest in creative writing, and I've published a couple of books. The truth of the matter, though, is that they really do see me as their teacher, which is how I want it. Yeah. I have had a couple of kids, ask me to sign their copies. Sometimes I've had them, their parents have read my books, and they've asked me to sign copies for their mom or their dad, and that's really sweet. Or, a handful of kids that have asked me for advice, when it comes to their own creative writing, which I'm touched that they would ask. Yeah. So it does bleed into the classroom a little bit, but really when I'm at school, I'm teach yourself, and that's kind of how I prefer it, I think. Yeah.
Okay, take me all the way back. Education. Did you always want to be a teacher, or AE, did you always want to be a writer?
Well, I definitely always wanted to be a writer. Okay. Before I could even actually write, I used to dictate stories to my mother. And I tell her, take a note, write these down, and then I would illustrate, the little stories. I would make little books. I used to make a family newspaper on our dot matrix. That's a flashback for people of a certain age. I would print out, a dot matrix printer, my mom burned the spaghetti sauce, or, whatever, whatever funny little things I could come up with. I always wanted to be a writer. Yeah. In fifth grade, I won this writing competition that my school had that year. Instead of the science fair, we had a book competition, and I won. I wrote a little book called Mystery at Grandma's. You can figure out what it was about. So the writer me, I'm one of those womb writers. I've heard the phrase womb writer. Teacher me, that was a little bit of a different journey. I was a journalism major. I went to Northwestern. I worked as a journalist. That's what brought me to Houston. I worked for the Houston Press, the alternative weekly in town. This was back when it was a print paper. And I enjoyed it. And I think that my journalism training helped me as a writer of fiction. But I didn't have, the taste for blood sometimes that, if you're going to be an investigative reporter, I just didn't have it. And I worked in nonprofits, and I was kind of trying to figure out what I wanted to do. And my mother-in-law, my late mother-in-law, she had been a teacher for over 30 years. Mm-hmm. And she, bless her, was the one that said to me, I think you would be a good teacher, Jennifer. And in my late 20s, I did the alternative certification program that was offered at the time through Houston ISD. And I began 2005. And I always say that was some of the best advice that I ever received from my mother-in-law. Yeah. She saw something in me, and I'm so glad that she did.
So just for timeline's sake, when did your first book come out?
My first book, The Truth About Alice, came out in 2014. Yeah.
Okay, so you were already a teacher at that point.
Oh, yeah.
Too,
and in fact, really, my teaching career is why I started writing fiction. I'd been trained as a journalist. I'd had some success having some personal essays published here and there. But, I didn't really think of I was like, can I even write fiction? I didn't go to Iowa. I wasn't even an English major, right? And I was working at a middle school and was seeing all the books. Again, this was like 2005, 06, this is a while ago. I was seeing these young adult novels that my students were reading. And I started thinking, could I do this? And that's really what kind of prompted me to actually try to start writing fiction was the books that my students were reading. And so I honestly wonder if I hadn't become a teacher, would I have ever, become a writer of fiction? And so I really credit that profession. Really, the two professions have bled through, even though, like I said, I do try to keep my teacher self when I'm with my students. My two professions have, bled through many times.
Obviously, I would think your teacher self gets to work in a lab that helps give you some ideas for your author self.
Of course, yeah. And like I said, earlier, just my advice to people who want to be writers, especially young people, is you have to be an observer of human nature. Even if you want to write fantasy or sci-fi, all of those stories are often allegories of, humans, right? You need to observe. You need to get bored. You need to be in the doctor's waiting room, put your phone away and spy on the world around you. Listen to the conversations, happening. Observe how a mother and child are interacting, or a couple is having an argument at the restaurant or whatever. By being an observer of human nature, that's what I think leads. It's one of the tools I think you need to be a good writer.
Are we going to have a hard time with new fiction, new stories coming out as we have become so dependent on our phones? When you say that, I think there's an entire generation that doesn't know how to observe the world around them.
Well, and it's frightening for me, and I love my students. I love young people, but I worry, and it's not their fault. Right? We've given them a world where it's very difficult to be bored. It's very difficult to build your imagination muscle. When I was a kid, my mom, there were 3 of us, she'd schedule the 3 dental visits, right, at the dentist. I'm stuck at the dental waiting room. I have to sit there while my brother's getting his teeth cleaned, my sister's getting her teeth cleaned. I don't want to do my homework. I've already read that copy of highlights, I need to have an imagination. Today, and I see this with my own son, what's their first impulse? To pull out the phone. It's my first impulse sometimes too, right? And so, I really do worry about, not just for writers, but for any profession or anything you want to do, you need that quiet space with your own mind. And it's a harder and harder thing to do in today's world. And so, yeah, it's a concern that I have for sure in terms of what, writing is going to look like in the future, not to mention AI and all of that.
I was just going to go to AI then when you said that. I wasn't planning to go there, but I'm thinking, so what does that do? And can you as a writer see AI as a tool that you can use to improve what you're doing, or is it inherently going to destroy the art form?
I was just having lunch with a fellow teacher, and we were talking about the way that people, and I think people would hear me and go, "Oh, but you're already a good writer. Don't you see that this makes it easier for me?" And I wasn't very good at math, so I get the tendency to want to have help to do something that's not naturally easy for you. That said, I worry a lot about AI in terms of our ability to craft, to use language. There is something inherent in the struggle of making something that is necessary for humanity to keep going forward. Not to mention, this is my opinion, I think a lot of what AI produces, at least at this point, is sort of toneless. It feels there's no voice to it. It's grammatically perfect, but it is a toneless sort of lump of language to me. And I personally don't like it. It's here. We're going to deal with it as a society. I have a lot of concerns about it. I personally don't believe any self-respecting writer of fiction should use AI in any capacity. That's my opinion. I'm sure there might be some who disagree, but the day that I use AI to write something is the day I need to hang it up. That's my opinion. I'm sure there's others who will disagree. Who knows where we'll be in 100 years. But for me right now, if your fiction is not coming out of your own head, then it's not your work.
Okay, let me try one other pitch on IA for you.
Yeah.
Is you finish your manuscript, I assume, and you send it off to an editor to look it over.
Yes.
What if you finish your manuscript and you put it through AI to do the same as an editor would do, to check grammar, to check spelling, to check layout, style?
Well, first of all, I don't want to put my work out there for other people to take from, right? That alone is problematic for me. Like, it's my work, right? I don't like the idea of then this large language model having access. And we already see this, right? Actually, there's a large class action lawsuit against Anthropic that writers are participating in because Anthropic was using novels, I'm part of this, to, build language, right? They're taking authors' work. And so I'm not keen on a large language model having my work to begin with. Beyond that, I admit there's probably people that are of a different brain type than me, but like, to me, art is human. Painting, writing, music, performance, it is a human thing. And when we stray from that, I just get nervous. And so when I talk to an editor on the phone and we, talk about how can we make this book better, how can we make something work, it is an intimacy and of an act of vulnerability that I'm having. I don't want to have that with a machine. I need to have that with another human. So I am very resistant to the idea of AI in the arts. I'm sure there's some cool performance art that could maybe be done with it.
Yeah.
I think that that's probably something you could think about, but yeah, I don't want to have anything to do with it when it comes to writing fiction, for sure. Really, I don't want to have anything to do with it. That's going to be my honest answer.
Jennifer's done with it.
I'm done with it, but definitely when it comes time to writing fiction. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay, I've got to talk about it because everyone wants to know about Moxie. So take me back to how Jennifer Mathieu writes Moxie. Where does the idea come from initially, and how much of it was happening around you in real?
Well, when I was young in the 90s, in the 1990s, because of course my students have to say the 1900s, right? In the 90s, I was really into Riot Girl. I loved Bikini Kill. I was a huge Slater-Kinney fan. I can't count how many times I saw them live. I even made a little zine, a little fanzine, this like sort of homemade magazine called Jennifer that I would mail to my friends. And that world meant a lot to me. Punk music, all of it, the spirit of it. And I wanted to write. I believe a lot of our books, the best fiction sometimes comes, at least for me, out of things that I'm fascinated by or obsessed with or interested in. Right. And so I was like, I want to write like a Riot Girl novel. But when I thought about it, I'm like, I don't want to write, it'll be historic fiction if I actually set it in the 90s, right? And I didn't want to do that. And I hit on this image of a girl finding her mother's sort of Riot Girl memorabilia. And that sort of sparked this whole notion. I remember where I was hit with the idea. I was texting with a friend of mine, and my friend Kate Soa, and I was like, what do you think about, and then this, and then that, and I could even make the zines, because the zines that the main character Vivian makes, the Moxie zines, are actually in the novel, and I made those. Like I had made my zine Jennifer. I'm like, I could make the zines, and da-da-da-da. And so it was really sort of like this thunderbolt of this sort of, eureka moment. And that's really where it came from. Just my love and interest in feminism, Riot Girl, punk, but also knowing that I didn't want to write a work of historical fiction. Right. So that's where it came from. Yeah.
So then how long did it take to write?
I don't know exactly how long that manuscript took. It typically takes me about a year or so to write a manuscript. So I'm assuming it probably took about that length of time. But yeah, it was a fun, that was some of the most fun I've ever had. Not all my books have been easy to write. And I'm not saying that it was easy, but it was probably the most joyful experience that I had as a writer.
What made it joyful?
Because I was writing about something that was so fun for me when I was young. Just the whole DIY, do-it-yourself culture, and being a young woman and your eyes opening up to, feminism and fighting for your rights. And also to that, the book Moxie for me is, and it doesn't always get mentioned as one of the main themes, but something I really love about Moxie is that it's about this warm, tender, supportive relationship between a mother and a daughter. And that means a lot to me in the book, Vivian's relationship with her mother. And in the film, Amy Poehler plays the mom perfectly. And so, I think there's also first romance in it, which is always fun to write. I don't actually write a lot of romance in my books, but that was probably, one where I really got the opportunity to let loose, yeah, it was just a really special book. It just made me so happy. And of course, I listened to Riot Girl music while I was writing it, and just taking me back to like I went to school in Chicago, going to the Metro was old, and all these different places where I would go hear bands. And it was just a lot of nostalgia too, you know. Yeah.
When writing something like that, how much of it is you're simply putting out a narrative as it comes to you and characters and developing them, putting them out? How much are you paying attention to in that process of theme, of message, of idea, of larger issues that you're working through and playing with, or how much of that comes after the fact when you realize what you've written?
I think what drives me first and foremost as a writer are characters, and every writer is going to give you a different answer probably. But for me, I fall in love with my characters as full, complete human beings. I think about them, you know, what happened to them before they were in my book, what's going to happen to them after the book is over. I have whole worlds and universes planned for them, even parts that aren't seen in the books. So I'm driven by character, to the point where sometimes my editors that I've worked with are like, we've got to like up the stakes in your plot. Like, I know you think it's really interesting to have your character brushing their teeth, but like we need to have more things happen, right? So I'm not a particularly plot-driven writer, but you know, so I start with the character, then the plot takes shape. In terms of themes, bigger ideas, probably subconsciously there's things that are bleeding out, but often I don't typically know what those will be until the work really starts to take shape. I don't necessarily think I'm always like, well, this is going to be a book about, like, I'm sure a little bit.
Allegory when you sit down.
Like, I mean, like I said, I think at least subconsciously, probably, maybe a little consciously too. Like, I'm writing a book about teachers. Well, like, I'm making a statement about education today. Like, that has to be there. But I don't think about it as much as I think about like who the characters are as human beings. That's really at the forefront.
My conversation with author and educator Jennifer Mathieu. The full conversation that we had will be available on Houston Public Media's YouTube channel later this week. Just look for InnerVIEWS with Ernie Manouse, Jennifer Mathieu. Jennifer's latest book, The Faculty Lounge, is available wherever you find your books. Stay tuned with us. There's more Hello Houston right after this break.
It's not just your car. It's the one that brought your kids home from school, took you cross-country, held memories, laughter, even a few breakdowns. When it's time to let go, give your car a new purpose. Donate it and turn memories into meaningful support for this station. Plus, you'll enjoy free and easy pickup, potential tax benefits, and a simple donation process. Your gift supports the programs you and your family love. Donate today and help keep public media strong. Call or donate online.
Call 888-909-0887.
Beef prices have gone up tremendously. This is our most shoplifted case in the whole store.
You're kidding me.
Steaks and beef. Yep, we had to add a security guard in the morning. We only have one afternoon through closing time. We had to add one in the morning.
I'm Natalie Ketroev. That's Today on the Daily from the New York Times.
You can listen to The Daily. It's on tonight at 7 o'clock.
Support comes from Miller Outdoor Theater, presenting Summer Symphony Nights produced by the Houston Symphony. Weekends July 10th through the 18th at 8:30 p.m. Performances include works by classical and contemporary composers. Details at milleroutdoortheater.com.
Support for Houston Public Media comes from Chariot Energy, offering customers electricity plans that match their energy use schedules and lifestyles. All plans come with 100% renewable energy. Details at chariotenergy.com.
Support for Houston Public Media comes from Alley Theater, presenting The Girl on the Train, a psychological thriller about memory, perception, and the search for the truth. Opens July 24th. Tickets at alleytheater.org.
And now back to Hello Houston. To comment on today's topics, call or text 713-440-8870 or email us at talk@hellohouston.org. And now Ernie Manouse and guest host Michael Adkison.
For 31 years, Rich Levy has served as the executive director of Inprint, Houston's premier literary arts nonprofit organization. During his time in this role, Mr. Levy has helped the organization increase its staff, attract a dedicated board, and has brought a world-renowned group of writers to Houston, which has helped cement the city's reputation as a literary city. And now, as of June 30th, he has stepped back from the role, leaving behind an impressive legacy as he embarks on a new chapter of his life. And he's joining us now here on Hello Houston. Houston to tell us about his time as Inprint's executive director, the impact that he had on Houston's literary scene, and what's next for him. Rich, welcome to Hello Houston.
Thank you. I appreciate it.
For folks who
Happy
just
to be
don't
here.
know, explain what Inprint is.
Oh, it's something I've been doing for 31
Yes, I knew
years,
you'd
so
be
I
able to do it
understand
well.
that completely. We are a literary arts nonprofit, and so we champion books and the people who write them, and we also have this kind of somewhat troublesome and wonderful theory that anybody can be a writer. And so we help cultivate that in all sorts of people all over the city.
What makes you say troublesome?
Well, I'm being a little ironic there, but there are some people who simply don't want certain stories told. We know that in today's world. And so we're in, for example, Harris County Jail, and we were in Fort Bend County Jail teaching workshops to inmates.
Wow.
And it's a really empowering thing when someone can tell their own story.
Do you feel, though, everyone has a story in them to tell?
I do.
So what's the trick to telling it well?
Oh, that's a good question. I think a lot of it is just, as a writing teacher, you come in with different prompts. Like back in the day when I was a young whippersnapper, and I had a writing teacher who put a boot on the table and said, start with the boot and go from there. You have to, there's a writer named, now I'm forgetting her name, Annie, I can't remember, but she wrote a book called Brick by Brick. And it was a writing book. And the idea was to write about your neighborhood. And her students were having a hard time getting started. And she said, well, just focus on the street. And still a hard time. How about the house? Finally, just look at one brick. Pick a brick and go from there. In other words, specificity is the way to begin.
Yeah.
Food smells. What did you smell in childhood that's evocative? It's interesting.
I love that because I think there are certain authors, we talk about David Sedaris, Joan Didion's another example, that so much of their writing is exactly that, of just talking about the mundane almost and telling it in this great story and, building it out to something. So you can see that in real authors, their work.
Yeah, and it often leads to the profound. And in a way, if you try to shoot for the profound from, the beginning, you're never going to succeed. You have to kind of sneak up on the profound.
We were just playing an interview that I had done with author Jennifer Mathieu in the last segment. She was talking about AI. We had a conversation about AI. What are your feelings about how that is going to impact the writing world?
I think
it is impacting.
Yeah, it's true. It's impacting everything. I think it's a great tool for research, but I think it's a real problematic tool for creative people. And I think it will never really substitute the kind of whimsy, the kind of crazy, weird left turns that people make in their writing. You just can't sort of predict that. And that's what makes, to me, a lot of writing exciting, is when it takes that crazy left turn and you look at the book or the poem and you go, wow.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm curious, on the flip side of this, we're seeing more and more in art people having to disclose. There was no AI used in the making of this. There are movies where people, because you see people accusing, this looks like it was AI generated. This reads like it was AI generated.
Yeah.
What do you think even that aspect to it is going to do to water down the impact of authors and writers?
Well, people aren't reading the way they used to, that's for sure. And the poor book, is kind of struggling to have a life currently in this country. And I think, it's going to be a challenge, but it's one worth taking.
I'm fascinated by the way you worded that, and most people probably didn't catch it. You said people aren't reading the way they used to, because I'm a strong advocate for the fact I think we're reading more than we ever did because of our phones and our tablets. But it's not the way that the mind used to engage with the written word.
It's actually, yeah, you're absolutely right. And it's, a book has a kind of topography. You flip the pages and you think, oh, wait, what was that phrase that he used about 6 pages back? And you go, oh, she had something happening at the beginning that kind of foretold this. You can flip back and forth, and it requires some attention.
Right.
And our attention spans have gotten smaller and smaller and smaller.
Yeah.
And that's a serious problem, really.
Yeah. What
Yeah,
were
we all have to
about?
put our phones down. Right, exactly.
Who is this here? You know what? Not to lose the attention here of the fact and the reason we have you here is this 31-year-long career with Inprint. Some of your moments that you are most proud of, maybe the ones that aren't getting the attention that a news release would say, but really for you personally.
Yeah, I love actually every time one of our community workshops has a sort of end of session celebration, and the senior citizens, or I haven't been to the Harris County Jail celebrations. I wish I'd been to one of those, although I visited the jail before and talked to the folks there. The veterans celebrations, there's teachers, the K through 12 teachers, all those kinds of celebrations are fantastic. You know, they're reading their work, they're not writers, they don't see themselves as writers, but they're creating stories that they can share with family and friends and their communities, and it's really moving to me.
Yeah. On the flip side of this, we have recently been talking to a lot of people who are like they are leaving their position after their tour of duty, but we got to stop thinking that means retirement. What do you have on the horizon?
Yeah, I'm kind of excited. My partner is a French citizen, and she has been nice enough to live here with me for the last 16 years.
I think I know where this is going.
Her kids and her grandkids are now living in Paris. So they were moving back and forth between the U.S. and France, and now everyone's there. So, yeah, my French, I need to work on it, but we're on our way. Yeah.
What would you be doing in France? Do you have any idea what you
Good
want to
question.
do there? Yeah.
Sleeping late, eating good food, reading a lot, writing a lot. I'm a poet, and I would like to have the time and the mind to really focus on my own work.
You talk about having the time. And I think to myself, we joke all the time, Michael and I, about, I'm reading this new book. And Michael's, reading? I was like, well, listening to it on tape while I drive. I feel like that's what's missing is the time to take to sit with a book. And when you're talking about how we read differently now, to have the time to pay attention to what I'm reading, engage, be taken away by this book to another place. Do you worry in today's day and age that even if the desire is there to read, we're not getting the full experience of what a book can give us?
Yeah, it's a problem. But we're hoping, Inprint is hoping, that if we have these programs where we bring great writers to Houston for adults, for children in English and Spanish, and you're in the audience and you listen to this and you're moved by it, that you go out in the lobby, you buy a book, you take it home, you read it, you love it, you buy another book, et cetera, et cetera. And with the kids especially, because our series is focused, it's called Cool Brains. We started that about 20-something years ago. We focus on middle grade authors, which is for kids ages about 9 to 12, maybe a little older. And they're old enough to read on their own and not too old for the most part to go somewhere with their parents on a Sunday afternoon. And so we feel like we're catching them at a sweet spot. And if they get excited about meeting a writer they love, it could change their lives.
There's a memory I have, and if anybody in the audience can help me with this, I would really appreciate it. And I was around in that age range, and I remember sitting under a tree in our backyard reading a book that captivated me so. I stayed out until it got dark and I had a little flashlight, and I was still reading it. And it was a young adult book, but it was something about in a Western town. It was set back in like the 1800s, and they had like either a robot or a Frankenstein monster or something in the book that was there. It wasn't a scary book, but he had this like robot thing. I cannot find a reference to this book anywhere. I have no idea what book it was, but that memory of me sitting there with that book and being so engrossed in it and being outdoors and just, I couldn't wait to turn the page.
Yeah, it's magical. It really is. And that experience of losing yourself in a book and in writing as well and reading, it's pretty great.
We've got about a minute left, so I'm
Sure.
going to ask you a pretty big question, unfortunately. I'm dying to know, now that you are no longer the executive director, maybe you can share your opinion of the Margaret Brown reading series or any other event where you brought authors here.
Yeah.
What was your favorite? What was one where you said, wow, I've changed after hearing this author speak?
Well, I loved so many of them. But, what was amazing to us was when we brought Salman Rushdie on the night before 9/11.
Yeah.
And that was a life-changing event.
Sure.
And we survived it. There were protesters on the steps of the alley, but, a full house. We got through, and Salman was our guest.
He came in
for
and
2-3
we interviewed
days.
him. We interviewed him here on the show
Yeah.
when he was in town for that.
Yeah.
Just to put in perspective, too, over your tenure, what you have brought in were 13 Nobel Prize winners, 74 Pulitzer Prize winners, 71 National Book Award winners, and 23 U.S. Poet Laureates. That's an impressive run.
Well, it's a team effort, and I hope it continues long into the future.
Rich, thank you very much. Rich Levy is the outgoing he's left now, executive director of Inprint. Thank you for joining us. To learn more about Inprint and the work they do, you can visit inprint.org. Thanks, Rich. Okay, that brings us to the end of the show. Michael, thank you for making another special Monday.
Anytime. I'm happy to be here.
How about any Monday?
Any Monday.
Come
Every
on
Monday.
back. And we'll be back tomorrow. We're going to be hearing the latest episode of Brandon Rottinghouse's Techspert series, plus so much more in Hello Houston. See you then. Bye-bye.
Thanks for listening to Hello Houston. Join us every Monday through Friday from 11 a.m. to 1 p.m. to talk all things Houston. The Hello Houston production team includes Garrett Bowman, William Menjivar, Jen Altide, Todd Holslander, and Jim Kovacic. For the latest in local news, subscribe to the Hello Houston daily newsletter at HoustonPublicMedia.org. Hello Houston is a production of Houston Public Media. The opinions expressed by the guests of this program are solely their own and do not represent the views of management, staff, or underwriters of Houston Public Media.
Houston, this is the moment to give. Just $650,000 remain to reach Houston Public Media's Resiliency Fund goal. That's 15% left. Help keep Houston informed. Give now at HoustonPublicMedia.org/donate.